All right, so today we're diving headfirst into a topic that's pretty much impossible to ignore these days: human impact on the environment. Specifically, how our choices, especially when it comes to energy, are shaping the world around us. And we've got a ton of research to unpack, everything from urbanization to pollution, you name it, to figure out what's really going on and what it means for us.
Yeah, and it's amazing how intertwined these issues really are. We're not just talking about isolated power plants or shrinking forests. It's all part of this complex web, this interconnected system we're a part of.
Exactly. And our sources don't shy away from the harsh realities. One even used this really striking visual, like picture a lush forest, but it's literally sliced in half. One side is vibrant, full of life, and the other is just barren. That's the kind of impact we're talking about here.
It's a powerful image, right?
Yeah.
And it underscores how these terms we hear all the time, pollution, deforestation, overconsumption, they're not just abstract concepts. They have real-world consequences, both for the environment and for all of us living in it.
Yeah, we're talking dried up rivers, megacities struggling to support their populations, a shortage of basic necessities. And then there's climate change, which is like the elephant in the room, directly tied to our actions, and we're already seeing the effects.
Absolutely. Climate change isn't some distant threat anymore. It's our reality now, influencing everything from weather patterns to sea levels, impacting ecosystems across the globe. It's happening, and it's affecting us all.
Okay, so let's break it down, starting with pollution. And it's more than just that visible smog, right? We're talking about any harmful substance released into our environment, and it happens in so many ways, often without us even realizing it.
Right. Our sources break it down to two main categories. First, you've got your primary pollutants, things like carbon monoxide, which is odorless and colorless, produced by things like, car engines that aren't running properly. Think about all those cars idling in traffic. And then there's sulfur dioxide, that pungent gas. It primarily comes from burning fossil fuels, like those images of industrial smokestacks spewing out fumes.
And let's not forget about particulate matter. These tiny particles, like from smoke, dust, car exhaust, I mean anything, really. And they're so small they can get lodged in our lungs. We're talking serious health impacts here, both for humans and the environment.
Absolutely. It's a major concern. And then the second category, secondary pollutants. These are formed when those primary pollutants react in the atmosphere. You know that hazy layer you sometimes see hanging over a city? That's ground-level ozone, and it's a harmful secondary pollutant.
And acid rain, those pictures of rain droplets clinging to leaves, slowly corroding them, that's another example, right? That's what happens when sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides react with other things in the atmosphere.
Exactly. It's a chain reaction. And what's really striking is how far-reaching the effects of pollution are. We're not just talking about dirty air or polluted water. It disrupts entire ecosystems, contaminates water sources with chemicals, waste, microorganisms. It even threatens the stability of our economies.
It's like a domino effect. And speaking of threats, deforestation is another huge issue highlighted in our research. I mean, forests are like the Earth's lungs, but we're losing them at an alarming rate, and the consequences go way beyond just the trees themselves.
Definitely. Deforestation just accelerates global warming, speeds up soil erosion,
Yeah.
makes flooding more likely. It disrupts the biodiversity of these delicate ecosystems, pushing out all those species that depend on forests to survive. And let's not forget about the human cost, displacing entire forest communities whose livelihoods and cultures are intertwined with those forests.
It's like watching a vital organ slowly disappear. And then there's urbanization, another one of those double-edged swords. Cities are hubs of opportunity, right? Attracting more and more people seeking a better life.
Definitely. Cities offer so much. Jobs, education, healthcare, a blend of cultures and ideas. But our sources also point out the downsides. That rapid, often unplanned growth puts a huge strain on resources and infrastructure.
You're talking overcrowding, increased pollution, social inequality. So how do we manage that? Sustainable urban planning, is that the key?
Exactly. It's about finding ways to make cities livable, equitable, and sustainable for everyone, not just a select few. And that brings us to the heart of so many of these issues: energy. Our sources delve into both nuclear power and renewables as potential ways to meet our growing energy demands, hopefully in a way that lessens our impact on the planet.
Okay, so let's talk power, and we'll start with nuclear energy. It's a low-carbon energy source, sure, but there's always that image of those massive power plants and that lingering question about safety.
Nuclear power is fascinating, tapping into the immense energy locked within the nucleus of an atom, using nuclear fission, the splitting of atoms, to generate heat which then gets used to produce electricity.
It's mind-blowing when you think about how much power is contained within those tiny atoms. And the appeal is clear. It's this consistent, reliable source of energy, especially for those baseload demands. But there's always a but, isn't there?
Exactly. And that's the dilemma with nuclear energy. Yes, it offers a low-carbon alternative to fossil fuels, but those inherent risks are impossible to ignore. The potential for catastrophic meltdowns, like what happened at Chernobyl or Fukushima, those events cast a long shadow.
They were devastating, releasing all that radioactive material, causing so much damage, long-term health consequences. I mean, those images of those abandoned towns are unforgettable.
Right, and then there's the challenge of radioactive waste disposal. It has to be handled so carefully, stored long-term in those deep geological repositories to prevent contamination. And not just for us, but for future generations too. It's a heavy burden, literally.
So where does that leave us? Is nuclear energy a viable solution for a low-carbon future, or are those risks just too great?
It's a question that continues to spark debate. Scientists, policymakers, the public, everyone has an opinion. Okay, so let's shift gears completely and talk about the other side of the energy coin, renewables. Unlike those finite fossil fuels, these sources replenish naturally. We're talking about a diverse range of options, each with its own set of advantages and challenges.
Let's harness some of that natural power. Our sources lay out quite the menu. Solar, wind, hydro, geothermal. It's like the clean energy buffet out there.
And each one has a unique story to tell. Take solar energy, for instance. We're talking about directly converting sunlight into electricity using photovoltaic panels. Those vast solar farms soaking up the sun's rays, or those sleek solar panels popping up on rooftops, quietly powering homes and businesses.
It's clean, it's abundant, it's becoming more affordable all the time. You can really see solar energy gaining momentum. Those solar panels aren't just a novelty anymore, they're becoming part of the landscape.
And then there's wind power, capturing the kinetic energy of the wind itself, those iconic wind turbines, their blades slicing through the air. We're talking about generating electricity on a scale from individual homes to entire communities. It's incredible.
Yeah, and the technology has come a long way too. They're much more efficient, more affordable, and honestly, they're becoming a pretty common sight, at least in some parts of the world. It's like we're literally harnessing the power of nature.
Speaking of harnessing nature, let's talk about hydropower. It's one of the more well-established renewable energy sources, using the flow of water to generate electricity. Think about those massive dams holding back rivers, their turbines spinning as water surges through, generating power on a grand scale.
And hydropower often comes with these added benefits too, right? Like flood control, water storage, which can be essential in areas prone to droughts. But it's not without its downsides either, is it? I mean, we have to consider the impact on the environment.
Right, you always have to weigh the trade-offs. Hydropower is considered renewable, but these large dams can have a big impact on ecosystems. They change water flow patterns, can disrupt habitats, and even contribute to methane emissions, unfortunately. So finding that balance, that sustainable approach to hydropower development, that's key.
It's like we're constantly walking this tightrope between harnessing nature's power and trying not to mess everything up in the process.
And speaking of balance, our sources also touch on tidal energy, which captures the energy of the ocean's tides, super predictable, which is helpful. We're talking about things like tidal barrages, which are essentially structures built across estuaries, or even underwater turbines that capture the power of those natural ebbs and flows of the tides.
It's kind of wild that we can generate electricity from the ocean's natural rhythms like that. And compared to fossil fuels, it's way better for the environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But like with anything, it's not a perfect solution. There are challenges. High upfront costs can be a hurdle, and there's always the potential for impact on marine ecosystems. That's why you need to be really careful about site selection and monitor the environment closely.
Okay, now let's move on to something that feels almost like science fiction geothermal energy, tapping into the Earth's internal heat to power our world. It's like we've discovered some secret energy source hidden beneath our feet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it does sound kind of magical. But really, it's just about harnessing the Earth's natural heat deep below the surface to generate electricity. The great thing is that it's consistent and reliable, available 24/7, regardless of whether the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. Plus, it has a relatively small environmental footprint. We're talking low greenhouse gas emissions, minimal land use. It's a win-win in many ways.
It sounds like it could be a fantastic option for regions that have the right geological conditions, but I imagine getting to that underground heat source comes with its own unique challenges.
You're right about that. Geothermal power plants require a pretty significant upfront investment. You have to do extensive drilling, build out the infrastructure. It can get expensive.
I feel like we keep coming back to this balancing act, weighing the benefits of clean energy against the economic and logistical challenges of actually making it work.
Absolutely. And we haven't even touched on biomass energy yet. This one is all about utilizing organic matter, stuff like wood, crops, even waste, to generate energy, either by burning it directly or converting it into biofuels like ethanol.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those pellet stoves, the ones that burn those compressed wood pellets for heating. It's amazing how much heat you can get from something as simple as wood.
Exactly. And it's renewable, which is a huge plus. And there's always but its sustainability completely hinges on responsible sourcing and management practices. We need to be certain that the feedstock, the stuff we use for biomass energy, comes from sustainably managed forests or agricultural practices that aren't harming the environment. Otherwise, we risk contributing to deforestation, habitat loss, all those problems we're trying to solve. It's about closing the loop, making sure it's truly sustainable.
It's a good reminder that even when we're talking about renewable energy, we can't just assume everything is automatically sustainable. It's more nuanced than that.
You got it. And that actually leads us to a really important point as we talk about transitioning to a future powered by renewables. What are those big challenges we need to overcome to actually make this vision a reality? Because there are some big ones.
It's like we've found this treasure chest of clean energy options, but we still need to figure out how to unlock it. So what are those roadblocks, those obstacles standing in our way?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles with renewables is their intermittent nature. The sun isn't always shining, the wind isn't always blowing. So to make these energy sources reliable, we need to crack the code on energy storage. And then there are smart grids, which can help us manage these fluctuations in supply and demand more effectively.
It's like trying to bake a cake, but your ingredients keep appearing and disappearing. You need a way to store those ingredients to make sure you have a consistent supply of energy no matter what the weather is doing outside.
Exactly. And of course, there's the upfront investment. Transitioning to renewables, especially on a large scale, requires a significant financial commitment. We're talking about building solar and wind farms, upgrading our energy infrastructure, transitioning to electric vehicles. It's a massive undertaking.
It's a paradigm shift, and those don't come cheap. But when you zoom out and look at the big picture, the long-term benefits for the environment, for human health, for the future of the planet, that investment starts to look a lot more essential, don't you think?
Without a doubt. But this transition requires a collective effort. Governments need to implement supportive policies, industries need to invest in research and development to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and we need individuals to get on board too. It's about the choices we make every single day.
So it's not just about waiting for those big systemic changes to happen. It's about empowering individuals to be part of the solution too. What are some ways that individuals can contribute to this transition to make a difference in their own lives and on a larger scale?
There are so many ways. You could power your home with renewable energy by installing solar panels or choosing a green energy provider if that's an option where you live. And then there are simpler things like just being more mindful of your energy consumption, using energy-efficient appliances, swapping out those old light bulbs for LEDs. Those small changes can really add up.
And we can't forget about transportation. Choosing to walk, bike, or take public transportation instead of driving whenever possible, that makes a difference too.
It all adds up. And being a conscious consumer is huge. Support businesses that are committed to sustainability. Think about the environmental impact of your purchases. It all matters. And don't underestimate the power of your voice either. Advocate for change in your community. Support policies that promote sustainability. Every action, no matter how small, creates a ripple effect.
It's about changing the narrative from feeling powerless to feeling empowered. Realizing that all those individual choices combined with collective action can truly create a more sustainable future for everyone. It's like we're standing at a crossroads with all these different paths we could take toward a more sustainable world. Some are all about technological innovation, like electric vehicles, green buildings, all that cool stuff, while others focus more on individual actions like embracing a more minimalist lifestyle, reducing waste, really being mindful of our consumption habits.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. There's no single solution, no magic bullet. It's not about picking one path over the other, but understanding that this is a complex problem that needs a multi-pronged approach. We need to be open to exploring all these options, figuring out how to integrate them into a cohesive strategy.
So it's about taking this holistic view, right? connecting those individual actions with the larger systemic changes. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together and cultivating a sense of shared responsibility to work towards a future where humans and nature can actually coexist and thrive.
Totally. It's about fundamentally shifting how we view our relationship with the planet. Not seeing it as something separate from us, but realizing that we are a part of nature, interconnected in every way, our actions have a direct impact, and it's time we really step up and own that responsibility.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. I mean, we've gone from those stark realities of pollution and deforestation to the hope and potential of renewable energy. It's been quite the journey, uncovering both the magnitude of the challenges we're up against and those glimmers of hope, those solutions that might actually be within our reach.
And while the research we've explored has given us a ton of knowledge and insights, it's also left us with this final thought-provoking question, something to really sit with as we move forward.
It's that lingering thought that sticks with you, prompting further exploration, deeper reflection. So, what is that final takeaway our sources have left us with?
As we work towards creating a sustainable future, how can we ensure that the solutions we pursue are equitable and accessible to everyone? How do we address the needs of communities that are disproportionately affected by environmental problems, both locally and globally?
It's a crucial reminder that sustainability isn't just about protecting the environment. It's about creating a fairer and more just world for everyone. It's about making sure everyone has access to clean air and water, affordable energy, and the opportunity to live a healthy and fulfilling life on a thriving planet.
Exactly. It's a challenge that requires us to think differently, to collaborate more effectively, and to be unwavering in our commitment to social justice.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful that the impacts of environmental problems and the costs associated with creating a more sustainable world are not distributed equally.
So, as you continue to learn about the impact we have on the planet and search for solutions, keep this in mind. It's a call to action for all of us. It urges us to go beyond simply finding solutions, but to make sure those solutions are inclusive and equitable, benefiting all of humanity and the planet we all call home. Because ultimately, a sustainable future must be a future for everyone.